ChatGPT passed the Turing test. Recently, we're talking April 9th. That's how far behind I am. So we're going to cover this one a little bit more in depth. Not too much, but just enough to give you the information that I think is pertinent. So, does that mean, just because it passes the Turing test, does that mean that ChatGPT is as smart as human beings? No. So, in a recent preprint study, 2 researchers at the University of San Diego used 4 large language models and put them through the Turing test. And the 4.5 Geppetto version was deemed indistinguishable from a human more than 70% of the time. Now, immediately right here, this would be my first contention. If you have a systematic machine that can systematically recreate the human, let's say, conversational or feedback abilities, it should be able to do so systematically 100% of the time. The fact that it can't is an immediate red flag. The Turing test has been popularized as the ultimate indicator of machine intelligence, but there's some disagreement about the validity of the test and or the nature by which one interprets what the success of the test actually means. This is one of the problems that the Turing test, I think, suffers from in a more like colloquial or modern term, which is people typically think of the Turing test as like, well, if you can pass the Turing test, you're essentially a human. We can't differentiate you from a human, so you might as well be human. And I think this is something that has been, let's say, conflated or expanded beyond its actual scope. So it talks about the study and what they did. They had participants who completed 8 rounds of conversations in which they acted as an interrogator, exchanging text messages with 2 witnesses simultaneously. One witness was a human, probably in the Philippines, and the other was an LLM. Some 284 participants were randomly assigned to be either the interrogator or the witness. If you don't get the Philippines joke, it's an inside joke for the regular viewers of Daily Tech News. Okay, you can go back and you can see where that joke comes from. Okay, you have to give me all your views. I'm going to let you go back all 42 episodes. You have to find out where that Philippines joke comes from. All right. Participants were required to interact with both witnesses simultaneously across a split screen for 5 minutes, with the test interface mimicking that of a conventional messaging interface. Following this interaction, they decided which was a human, which was an AI. Participants judged Geppetto 4.5 to be the human 73% of the time. The next closest 56% of the time was Llama, and then it fell off hard from there. What's the Turing test? Alan Turing created a paper in 1948 titled Intelligent Machinery. It was proposed as an experiment involving 3 people playing chess with a theoretical machine referred to as a paper machine, 2 being players and 1 being an operator. So they essentially the Turing test got expanded into, can you determine whether X is A and Y is B, or X is B and Y is A, with X and Y representing 2 genders? And if you can do that consistently and get the same answer between the machine and the human, then the machine has successfully duped you into believing that it is human. That's essentially kind of like the coordinates of the game, if you will. Why is it contentious? So there are 4 points here. Behavior versus thinking. Some researchers argue the ability to pass the test is a matter of behavior, not intelligence. Therefore, it would not be contradictory to say a machine can pass the imitation game, but cannot think. Number 2, brains are not machines. Turing makes assertions the brain is a machine, claiming it can be explained in purely mechanical terms. Many academics refute this claim and question the validity of the test on this basis. I would agree. Number 3, internal operations. As computers are not humans, their process for reaching a conclusion may not be comparable to a person's, making the test inadequate because a direct comparison cannot work. And the scope of the test. Some researchers believe only testing one behavior is not enough to determine intelligence. I would also agree with that. So is it? And based on the fact that there are what I would consider to be some pretty legitimate reservations on whether or not the Turing test can be considered as a de facto standard for whether a machine is essentially a human for all intents and purposes or not. I think that this isn't exactly a nail in the coffin of finally we have achieved a machine that can replicate a human. If that were the case, OpenAI would not need to buy Windsurf. That's it. That's it. That refutes the entire premise right there. Right there. It's all done. Even before LLMs, many bots were getting something like 50% on Turing test. Yes, because you can absolutely pass a create a mechanical deterministic step-by-step process where a machine can answer particular questions correctly over 50% of the time. Like, you could figure that out. That does not mean that it is a human or that it is anywhere close to being human-like, right? So I agree with that.